Hello and welcome everyone to the final installment of Pride Speaks 2021 presented by the Seattle Out and Proud Foundation. My name is Tim Marshall. I use he, him pronouns, and I am the program coordinator at Seattle Out and Proud, also known as Seattle Pride. You may know Seattle Pride as the parade people. However, tonight and also in other events in our event series, we want to highlight the work of our 501c3 organization, the Seattle Out and Proud Foundation, which strives to provide LGBTQIA+ and allied community members with educational and advocacy opportunities in order to connect, inspire, and strengthen our communities. So this event, Pride Speaks, is the first major output created by the Seattle Out and Proud Foundation. And we want to do this by putting a spotlight on the diverse experiences of LGBTQIA+ community members, and in the past has discussed topics such as queer competent healthcare, parenting queer youth, and demystifying gender, amongst other topics. Before we get started with tonight's description, I want to encourage anybody who can to help to sustain our work at the Seattle Out and Proud Foundation to become a one-time or monthly donor by visiting Seattle Pride and clicking the donate button. Any penny helps. So tonight we will be having a cozier discussion than normal as the winter holidays are near, about the concept of chosen family in the queer community and our experiences as queer folks finding our families when our biological or adoptive families haven't been as supportive or fully accepting as we would need. I want to recognize that while many of us have experienced challenges with our families, especially during the holidays when normative or traditional behaviors sometimes are at odds with our queerness, some of us may have healthy relationships with our traditional families. However, this panel is, and this event is those for who, regardless of the relationship they have with their biological families, find acceptance and authenticity with chosen families and friends. So I want to start off by introducing some of our lovely panelists for this evening, all of which are returning for Pride Speaks after doing such an awesome job in a past talk. I want to first introduce Monique Brown. Take it away, Monique.
Always got to get this unmute button. Hi, everybody. So my name is Monique Brown. I'm a 26-year Army veteran. I run a nonprofit that does outreach to veterans living without homes. We target minority veterans, so to speak, so veterans of color, LGBTQIA veterans, and just veterans who have a lot of mental health issues. Is that all you need from me, Tim? Is that good? Is that enough intro?
That's perfect. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Our next panelist, let's say hello to Mix Pucks Aplenty. Welcome, Mix Pucks. Oh, it looks like you are muted.
Hello. Should I be doing my bio or do you want to do my bio? What's best?
I can read it if you still stand by it, if it still feels true for you.
It still feels true for me.
Okay. So over to my right is Mix Pucks Aplenty. They are the director of Junk in the Trunk, the Michelle Obama of Burlesque, and Seattle's own Mixtress of Thickness. This roguish radical is always ready to ride, whether it be behind the scenes or on stage. Pucks is also the founder and co-producer behind What the Funk, an all POC burlesque festival, and is the co-producer behind Identities and Expressions, a virtual trans and I'm going to say that title again. Expressions, a virtual trans and non-binary performing arts festival.
That's me. That's what I do. I am currently the sitting chair for an organization called the Seattle Burlesque and Cabaret Association, and we are the proprietors of The Given, which is the only venue in Seattle that is owned and operated by burlesque and cabaret performers for burlesque and cabaret performers. Hello.
Sweet. Thank you so much. Last but not least, I want to introduce Sonj Basha. Sonj, do you want me to share your bio, or do you want to introduce yourself?
Let's do both.
Okay, I will start and then I'll kick it over to you. So Sonj Basha is a creative director, facilitator, and consultant based out of right here in Seattle, Washington. For 10 years, Sonj has been working with teams, movements, and organizations, building capacity to bring forth a more thriving, just, and sustainable world. 32 years of living as an underserved queer and Muslim immigrant has elicited a lifetime of learning how to bring deep cultural strategy to the forefront of their solutionary leadership. You are quite a wordsmith. I'm going to let you pick up where I left off.
Sweet. I mean, we all like to hear a little bit about ourselves every now and then, so it's good to get a refresher. Hey, everyone. Thanks, Tim, for moderating. It's really nice to meet you, Monique and Miss Puxaplenty. I'm excited to spend some time together this evening. As Tim named, my name is Sonj. In English forward spaces, my pronouns are exclusively they, them, and theirs, or just my name. Right now, I'm a director for an organization called Open Door, or a company called Open Door, rather, where I specialize in conflict resolution for dynamic co-living spaces. And I'm also the lead facilitator for AAOC, which is the Alphabet Alliance of Color Institute, which is a task force of various organizations out of Seattle that center the narratives of queer and trans people of color. So I kind of do a lot of the behind the scenes organizational development stuff. But I also often define myself by my relationships. And I think it's appropriate given the topic of our conversation tonight around chosen family. I often say that I'm a dynamic, multi-lover, friend, sister, cousin, auntie, UNTY to my newest little nibbling. And overall, just try to be a radical, collaborative community member that leans into healthy conflict and is just like builds chosen family wherever I go, as someone that was brought to this country and moved around a lot. And as a child had to constantly be like redeveloping my sense of community and family as well. So excited for this conversation. Thanks for having me.
Okay, Tim, now I want my bio read. Now I want you to read my bio. I feel left out.
I don't want you to feel left out. Let's finish our introductions with a reintroduction of Monique Brown. So Monique uses she, her pronouns, and she served in the Army for 26 years, beginning during Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Wow. She served one tour in Guantanamo Bay in support of operating Enduring Freedom and 2 tours in Iraq. She is also a survivor of military sexual trauma, and she has been working with veterans living on the street for the past 6 years. And then she somehow found the time to earn a master's in nonprofit leadership in 2020. Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I don't feel as left out now.
Good. That is good. Yeah. I am really excited to hear from y'all a little bit about your experience with the concept of chosen family. I love what you said, Sonj, about especially when it comes to like panels and kind of like introducing ourselves publicly. We often describe ourselves in professional terms or terms that could be listed on like a CV or a resume. I love finding spaces to be able to talk about each other more relationally, especially in, the queer community and disparate aspects of the queer community. I would love to push it back to our panelists to hear about, oh no, where are my notes? I'd love for y'all, whoever wants to start first, to tell us a little bit about your chosen family and what they mean to you.
Okay, I counted 4 in my head and then nobody went, so I'm going.
Go for it, Monique.
Awesome. So listen, I am one of those folks who has lots of support from my family. I came out at age 21. I'm 55 now, so I've been supported all these years. And if I need to talk to somebody, I've got them to talk to. However, being in the military, it's a different story, right? and then you leave your home. And so I'm here stationed in Washington. My family's in Los Angeles. And so I have to choose a family because otherwise I would be staying by myself for all the holidays and things like that. So when I was in the military, my chosen family was the folks that I served with. And then all of them got, sent somewhere else to serve. And so I was left here by myself. I actually met my chosen family at a club. I think I was at our place when I met my chosen family. But I met the kids, and then I ended up marrying their mother. And so this has become my family here. The chosen family that I have are half German and half Black. They were raised in Germany. So it has been interesting to learn about some of the cultures and things. And we still have clashes trying to figure out some of this stuff because the cultural differences are huge. But that is my chosen family. I'll go into a little more of that later, but that is who I have as a chosen family, and I've kind of married into it.
That's awesome. Thank you. That's interesting to think about different aspects of like the chosen family. I mean, choosing family depending on circumstances.
Right.
I have also had support from my biological family, but have also, like found family in like higher education, for example. And many of those people have been queer.
Yeah, Tim, the thing about like finding chosen families, you may have support at home, but when you're away from them, you don't have someone right there you can hug, you can cry with in their face and feel that support. It's totally different when you're over the phone with that support.
Totally. That's a really good point. Yeah, thank you. Who else would like to give us an intro to their chosen family?
I can go. So my chosen family, I'm polyamorous, and I live with two of my partners, and my child. I have an 11-year-old, and I'm not sure, in the middle of the kind of the kerfluffle about the bio, my son was coming to say goodnight to me, so I had to do that real quick. So I live with two of my partners, and my chosen family also consists of three other partners that don't live under the same roof as me, but all live in the Seattle area. And my chosen family, beyond like romantic relationships, I'm very close to my son's biological father. Still, he comes to our house on the holidays. He hasn't found someone to cook as good as I do yet, so I'm waiting for that day. And then I have just a close-knit group of folks that I've met through burlesque, of course, and I'm heavily involved in the sex positive and kink and BDSM scene, and have built a giant family through that connection as well. So, but my little family of four with myself, it's two submissives, myself, and an 11-year-old that thinks that he is the boss of all three of us, which is just not what's happening. So, oh, and they mean the world to me, clearly.
I love that. And I love that you get to have the luxury of spending time like in a fixed location with so many members of your chosen family. Well, your partners. That's about as chosen as it comes, I suppose. Your partners.
Absolutely. I mean, we all have varying degrees of closeness to our family of origin. I'm not particularly close to my family of origin. I'll get into that probably a little bit later. And then one of my partners is also not very close to his family of origin. He's from Arizona originally, and has created a beautiful network of friends and chosen family based off of a school that he went to that are like, that's his family. And my other partner is extremely close to his family, to the point that he says, I think my mother loved me too much, is what he says a lot, which I don't think is possible. She's lovely. And I joke that his dad is like 10 times cooler than he is, which is pretty true. His dad is pretty cool. So he has this, we get to see this kind of other side of having a close-knit group of a family of origin through him. And so it's pretty neat to see that.
I love that. I love watching, I'm going to interject a little less from here on out, I think, but I love hearing about like chosen families kind of like multiplying based on just like links of origin, as well as just kind of, vibing with each other and just watching families grow. That's pretty cool. Sonj, why don't you introduce us to your chosen family?
Sweet, thanks. Yeah, interestingly enough, when I first read this question, and when I even see this question now, I think about the fact that I actually like choose my biological family pretty regularly. Like I feel like I'm constantly in a state of like choosing them. I'm like, okay, this is tough. This is like, I'm leaning into all of my growing edges. My family is leaning into all of their growing edges. There's been such a like deep rooted history of like trauma and drama there. And so I'm constantly feeling like I'm actually choosing them. And I try to think about love a lot like that in general. I try to think about love as like a choice often. So I'll start there. And without going on a rant, what was heavy on my mind today was the passing of Bell Hooks, who was like a really big inspirational figure in my life, who's now going to just leave a legacy as a really influential ancestor. And she talks a lot about love too. And I think that I'd also consider, well, I asked one of my partners this. I'm like, oh, I'm going to be on this panel about chosen family. Like, what do you think? What do you think my relationship to chosen family is? And they were like, I feel like when we walk down the street and you see somebody that it's like so obvious that there's like a level of intimacy and authenticity there that like you drop into with your friends that you consider to be family that is queer. Like there's a queer kinship there, whether that's based on like an intentional collaborative process or whether it's just based on like just how much I value my intimate relationships, whether they're platonic or romantic or sexual or not. I think that the way I show up in queer kinship is like by constantly choosing to lean in with people like as hard and soft as I can. But I would say when I think about my chosen family, I'm like, ooh, I got to choose my mom today. Like, yeah. So I would say that's how I would answer that question, although that may be atypical.
So many good threads there. I love your points about choosing your family of origin. I think that as queer folks, many of us kind of have a unique choice of whether to follow the typical life course, whatever the typical life course is. And that means, like supporting your biological parents as they grow older, starting a family of your own, and you all are close knit. And that's not necessarily appropriate for everybody. And making that choice it's exactly that. It's a choice to be able to make those connections in relationships that may be challenging because of trauma. Yeah, really well said.
Yeah, Sanj mentioned about love, right? And so as you're choosing your family, you're choosing relationships, you kind of feel that heart connection, right? And so it makes it easier when you're trying to make that choice on who you want to let into your circle. And then that becomes family. I didn't think about, I was thinking about my actual family that I'm married into, but I have so many other families through work. There's that work family. And one of the things I pride myself on is that if you stand my whole family, whether it be a biological family or family of origin, my family that I'm married into, and my work family, you will see a rainbow of people. And I think I love that there is so much uniqueness in each person that is in my chosen family as well as my family of origin. And it all comes from love. And that's the big point that Sanj made.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, our family certainly can't operate without a sense of love and belonging, or it shouldn't, I think, in many cases. Yeah, really, really good thoughts on this. I'm so excited to learn more about all of your experiences with chosen family. Tying it into the time of year that we're in, being close to the winter holidays. Not everybody celebrates holidays in the winter. Many of us do, and kind of like the society around us definitely does in Seattle, Washington. Yeah, what times of remembrance or holidays do you celebrate? Either with yourself, your biological family, or your chosen family? Yeah.
See, I waited again, and nobody's. I keep waiting because I'm a talker. You let me go, I'm gone.
Let's go, Monique. You got the floor.
Okay, so holidays. So a couple of things I want to talk about here. In the military, right? When I was in the military, being here by myself, and especially as a young soldier, right? I was in the barracks during the holidays, and it was always so sad. But then when people find out that you're a single soldier, you start getting invited to people's houses, and that makes you feel a little bit closer. Now, with my family, especially with them being from Germany, I've experienced a lot of different things. Like my wife started baking on the 1st of December, and that is a custom. German women bake their cookies, and I mean, all kinds of cookies. They got the ones with the jelly in the middle and the sprinkles on top, and then they got the chocolate ones. I mean, a plethora of cookies around here. This is a bad time of year for me because I love sugar. But so they do that. We didn't have that in the family. We did like start a couple of days before Christmas and start baking and cooking, but they start the beginning of December. Sometimes they start baking in November. The other thing is that the German Christmas is on the 24th, and the American is on the 25th. So we celebrate Christmas on the 24th, and then on the 25th, we usually do like a brunch in pajamas and, have breakfast and whatever else we want to have. And we do it culturally because in our chosen family, we have German folks, we have Black folks, we have Latinos, we have Israelis, we have Filipinos. So we do it kind of culturally where everybody brings something from their culture to the table. And I think that's kind of cool. You get to experience different things at that time of year rather than the traditional Southern, turkey and greens and dressing and all that kind of stuff. We get to experience some different stuff during the holidays.
Nice. That sounds like a really, it sounds like you just have a lot going on in your house.
Always. We are the elders in the family, and we have the biggest home. So it seems that no matter what is happening, everything happens here, which I kind of love. I didn't have kids of my own, so it's kind of awesome to have all these younger people. They're in their 30s, so all these younger people coming to the home and then just talking and having a great time. Yeah.
Nice. Very cool.
I can build off that, Monique. Oh, Tim, were you gonna?
I was gonna say, sonj, take it away. That's perfect.
Oh, sweet. Yeah, just Monique kind of kicked us off with thinking about like non-American or what may be like non-traditional like Christmas time festivities. So I grew up as a Muslim American immigrant. So I did not grow up celebrating any of the traditional like Western centric holidays such as Christmas. But it always brought me back, especially as a young queer kid, always brought me back to like really exploring like my own sense of belonging. And I think this time of year really brings that up for me, even still, like regardless of how many rituals or how much like freedom I have to create my own, holiday festivities. Like I always lean into like what makes me feel like most at home and like is somewhere that I belong. And I think seeing as how this is a Pride panel, I talk a lot about my queerness, but I think also like being queer and kind of feeling like I've always been in a state of being like a shapeshifter and a magic maker and a dreamer and a healer, and something that has been like very far outside of like the norm or what I see in traditional media as being in family or being in tradition. I've always really leaned into like the natural flow of like the actual season. Like when I think about this time of year, I think about it being like winter time, and I try to just like dive into like more rest and more like the things that make me feel like, yeah, I'm moving with like the natural pace of the world more. Especially because going back to this idea of like chosen family, like it's such a privilege, like being here is such a privilege. And so much of like my indigeneity was like taken away when I was like westernized living in America. And so I feel like I try to use that to my advantage and like constantly be like leaning into like, you know what, this makes me feel liberated, or this is where I feel like I have a sense of belonging, and I can kind of like move with like the season and discover love. And I'll just add that along with that, I feel like being queer and being trans and being a person of color in America, a non-Black person of color, I've also had to like kind of reinvent like what, I don't know, safe spaces are for me as well, just based off of my experiences in like the mainstream like narratives. Like I've had to reparent myself. I've had to discover new modes of like healing and discovering who I am and where I fit in, and find my people. You know, it's okay that like not all people are for me and that I'm not for all people either. But like I'm in a constant like discovery of like exploring like who are my people, and not in a way where I regenerate disposability politics either, right? Because I think that like as a queer person that already feels marginalized so often, like being able to choose, like I said, is such a privilege, but it's also easy to like opt out, or like, ooh, there's some conflict happening, I'm uncomfortable, let me just go find another group of friends. Or, oh, I'm in this like conflict with my lover, we have these commitments, but this is like really hard because we're both just like projecting all our trauma onto each other, let me just go find another partner. You know, like I think that there's ways that like for me, this time of year makes me really value like who I hold close in a way where I'm willing to be like accountable and uncomfortable and I don't know, just all the things that I feel like being queer burdens us with. But I find like the beauty in it by like discovering how much like love I can actually lean into when I have the privilege of choice. I know that was kind of a long rant, but I've just been ruminating on it around this time of year, as like I just get to think more deeply about what makes me feel at home and what makes me feel like I belong.
I love that. Yeah, I love what you said about I mean in the kind of like within the line of choice, like we can choose the people around us, and we can choose like who we allow to kind of let into our hearts, but we can also choose what we do. Like I love the idea of like reinventing something based purely on what feels right to you. Yeah, don't hold back. I love that.
Sonj brought up a topic that is like a whole nother show, but you talked about like conflict and when do you stay in with your chosen family and when do you go? That's like a whole nother topic, but that is serious. And I think that's probably a good part of being able to choose your family. If there's something that happens that you can't deal with, that like that conflict is too big, you can kind of walk away from it and come back when you're ready. Whereas when you're with your family of origin, might not be the same.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Monique. Yeah. Do you have anything you want to add, Mixed Pucks?
Yeah. growing up, my parents got divorced when I was really little. Well, they separated when I was really little, like before I was born, but they didn't get divorced until I was 5. So basically my whole like childhood, it was one holiday event after another, usually on Christmas, and we're going to all the houses. And I was just very exhausted as a child. I used to hate Christmas because I'm like, oh, I don't get to stay anywhere. Like, I don't get to just be home. And I have a soon to be 12-year-old child. And as soon as I gave birth to him, I was reading a bunch of like parenting blogs and stuff like that. And one of the things I read that just like changed my whole life was just like, you're the parent, you get to make the rules. You don't have to go anywhere. You can just be like, I have the baby. And if you want to see the baby, you come here. And so that's what happened. I would just hold court with this really adorable, cute baby. And that's what we did. And so I've kind of held pretty steadfast to that around this time of year. We don't travel if we can avoid it. I think in the past almost 12 years since my son's been born, we have gone somewhere twice at Christmas time. And both times, I mean, I made it pretty clear that I was really unhappy about it, but fine. I love to cook. Cooking is my love language. I tell people that like the way that I'm pretty sure I'm a feeder, which is a type of fetish. But the way that I kind of like take the edge off of that is feeding lots of people a couple times a year. And it just kind of, that way I'm not making one partner extra plump. So that is how I express my love, and also, you know, take care of this fetish of mine. So, you know, we don't celebrate Thanksgiving in our home traditional, like the way that, you know, I think a lot of white Americans do. It's always been in my family of origin, especially. It's a day that we all happen to have the day off, and we don't have to go anywhere. So it's who's deep frying the turkey. That's kind of always been the way that my family is from the South. My dad's family is from Louisiana. My mom's family is from St. Louis. So cooking holidays, it typically isn't really about the consumerism that's going on with it. It's about who is going to cook great grandma's, you know, macaroni and cheese recipe this time, kind of thing. So I don't really have any strong attachment to, you know, the Americanized version of these holidays. It's more so just like kind of Black culture, you know, Black food and holiday culture. That's what I'm about. And so historically though, since I've been about, you know, for the past 15 years or so, we've been the kind of the orphan Christmas house. You know, I post my menu. I'm like, this is what I'm cooking. I don't have to put cheese in everything. You're right. You know, kind of thing. And we open up our home to our friends that can't go home because it's expensive to travel, because they don't have the best relationship with their family of origin, or they're like, we really want to help Pucks with that feeder fetish. So we're going to come and eat that food because we know it's going to be great. And I've kind of always had, like I said, this weird kind of, the way that I have always looked at Christmas has always been very strange. I have just feelings of like upheaval kind of around Christmas, and the consumerism of it all is really intense for me. And, you know, even with a small child who like doesn't watch like network television, you know, my child just like watches Netflix and Hulu. I have no clue what this kid actually wants for the holidays, which is very frustrating, but also kind of great too, in a way, because he's not driven by consumerism for the things that he wants. When he asks for something, it's like, I really would love to have like a bunch of notebooks and because I want to color. And I'm like, great. He's not seeing all of these like action figure commercials and things. So it was frustrating in the beginning, and now it's just like this kind of, it allows me to really stop and like look at what my child is into and ask questions and have these really fun conversations around what would be actually meaningful to him, as opposed to what is the latest and greatest that everyone has. yeah, but I felt like there was a dark time there where I was kind of humbug about the holidays, and really within like the past like 3 or 4 years, I've kind of come around a little bit more. Um, like just last night, I made all the boys dress in matching holiday pajamas just so I can have a photo op because I love those things. And they put the tree up and all of that. Like we have a black Christmas tree, and I'm very like my ornaments match the decor of my home kind of situation. So last year it was rose gold. This year it's silver. So it's all very stylized. If you can't tell, I'm kind of about the most sometimes. So like that's definitely kind of a thing for me. But them being in their holiday pajamas, it was really cute, and they're all really game for it, and it's really sweet. And my son's really big into Ghostbusters, so they all have matching shirts that say "There's no Dana, it's only Yule," and so so if you're familiar with Ghostbusters, in the original Ghostbusters, they're like, there's no Dana, only Zool. And so the shirts say Yule, and Dana's dressed up in Christmas stuff. And so my 12-year-old thinks that those are the greatest t-shirts that have ever happened in the history of mankind. And so it's things like that make the season really nice for me, is like this t-shirt made everyone's evening. And it didn't matter that like, oh, we got to go schlep the Christmas tree out of the garage, and where did we put it last year, and where are all the special ornaments, and kind of like all that kind of gets erased because we have a small child that is just over the moon about the fact that there's a Christmas t-shirt about Ghostbusters, and it's this really specific silly thing. And like, I don't know, that just kind of fills my heart up, being able to see these things through his eyes. And we're creating our own traditions that are really centered around, an autistic 12-year-old. And it's brilliant, and it's amazing and fun and really tactile. And it's really neat. So
Tim, I've got two things that Puck's said and just brought up for me. The first thing is pajamas. We have now started this new tradition where it's, pajamas on Christmas Day on the 25th. And it has become like a thing. Like couples are shopping together for their pajamas, and there's a competition about whose pajamas are best and whose makes noise and so that's become a big thing. The other thing, Puck, I wanted to say is I noted that you are a feeder, and it just so happens that I'm an eater. So I don't know, we might be working something out here. I could help your fetish. You could help mine.
That brings me joy. So much joy. I love feeding people. I really, really do. And
I
like
love
that's
eating,
right.
so.
That's the beauty of like the chosen family situation. I have a lot of folks in my sphere are gluten-free or vegan, and so the challenge of now creating some of these like black ass dishes that use all the butter and all the cheese, and you're just like, why are we putting cheese? Grandma said you put the cheese in.
You put cheese in, yeah.
So
layers,
like
layers.
Now like going back and looking at these recipes and figuring out ways to be able to provide that to my friends that are gluten-free and vegan. It's a challenge, but it's also like a fun challenge because like I want to get that shit right. This past Thanksgiving we had friends over who are gluten-free, and so I like went and made like my great grandmother's mac and cheese recipe, and and was like, what do we substitute to make this happen? And just like the sounds they were making while eating this mac and cheese made me feel so good. And then they were just like, there's leftovers. I'm like, ooh, please take it. Like, no one in this house is going to eat it, first of all. But two, it's for you. It is so for you. And so that just made me happy that like I was able to create a Thanksgiving menu this year for them that was like 85% things that they could actually eat without cross-contamination. So I'm just like, yay.
And there you go, Sonj. That we go back to love, right? You love those people enough to figure it out. That Southern meal to figure out how to make it gluten-free. I need your recipes because my goodness, I'll never figure that out.
Well, I'm hungry. I don't know about everybody else. There's so much in there. I love what you said, Pucks, essentially around the theme of like, just like continuing culture. Like we all make culture every day because we're all human beings living in the world, but like we can be, like there's no reason why we can't be intentional about how we want to cook or who we want to have around us or what traditions we observe, or if we choose to like do like the like traditional like white homogenous like Macy's downtown Black Friday Christmas. Like we can choose not to if we want to. And that, I feel like the freedom of being queer has a lot of complications in terms of family and life and liberties and a number of other facets, particularly if you belong to other marginalized communities on top of that. But like the freedom of being able to divest and create your own thing is just like so cool to me. I want to take us in just like a slightly different direction for a second. We got a really interesting audience member question that was hoping that you might be able to specify what essentially designates somebody as a member of your family. I know some queer folks that just call everybody family. You're a member of the family. Some people are friends. Some people are just like members of the community. How do you designate family members in your chosen family?
I don't know. For me, it just sort of it just happens. It's like one day this is a friend, and all of a sudden this is family. And it's really hard sometimes to kind of pinpoint when this happens. It's like for me, it's like this kind of like this strange alchemy sort of just happens. Like a situation presents itself, something just kind of happens. I have a lot of friends that I love and care about, but this idea of like family, I think it comes down to a level of intimacy, and this level of intimacy that I end up developing with people. I have folks that I've worked with in the burlesque community and in the kink community for years, that are just amazing people. And then there are these folks though that if something was to happen to me or a member of my family, they would be the first people. They would be on that list of people that you gotta call. And I think that that's kind of where that designation kind of comes from for me. There's this level of intimacy and trust. My door is always open to anyone and everyone, but I kind of think about it as like kind of these rings of and spheres of influence in my life, and it gets bigger, and it's really organic, and it just kind of breathes, and it kind of just brings in more people. But I feel like for me, the answer is there's this level of intimacy that happens, and this level of trust that just, and then it's like, you're mine, I'm yours. I'm sorry, that's just how it is. So, that's what's happening.
I can build off of that. I mean, other than the couple folks that have already sent me texts during this panel, obviously you're chosen, like Lowen and Abriel and Whitney and everyone that's like kind of just shows up. I think that is, always builds family when you can really depend on folks and they're the people you think about to reach out to. But one thing that I also think for me helps me decide this like threshold of like levels of intimacy over the course of my queerdom has been like who I can feel safe grieving with. And I know that sounds kind of heavy and intense, but actually for me, it's like a very natural part of my life. And it's a part of what has been my journey of exploring love and intimacy, is like how to grieve with folks and who I can feel safe enough to lean into my own grief with, and who I can hold in their grief and everything that comes up for that. And I think about also, I just did this like second annual Dia de los Muertos with some chosen fam of mine. And for me, there's just something really magical that happens when you can like bear your sorrows. And that magic to me is like, it actually creates an opening for like irrepressible joy. Like for me, like the most joyous and the most like light and the most authentic that I feel is when I'm actually not like, is when I've moved through my grief, right? And to be able to do that in connection and in collaboration and in community and not in isolation, which I think like mainstream culture and Western culture kind of, especially around this time of year where everyone's like cheery and you're supposed to be cheery and everyone's supposed to be happy, right? And it's like there's this way that we're like kind of taught to like hide ourselves a little bit and to like put on. And when I don't have to put on for you, like we're fam. Like if I can just show up and be how I am, like you're in and I got you in the same vein. And so I think for me, that often is that deciding factor of the threshold is like, who can I really just like break down so that I can build up with? That's what I think about.
Well, Sonj, great points. Listen, I feel the same way. Like, I am a real person. I'm going to tell you what I'm feeling. I'm going to protect, your feelings a bit, but I'm still going to share how I'm feeling. I'm pretty real, and I pride myself on coming to spaces as my whole self. And it's a vulnerable place to be sometimes. But those people are who become my family, the people who can be vulnerable with me, the people I can cry with, that can cry with me. Those people end up being family. There could be a lot of people in the room that I like, and I'm a people person, so I'm going to like a lot of you. But those that are real, those are the ones that get in. And I'm a Virgo, right? So Virgos, we watch, we soak in everything, we watch, and then we make decisions. And so that's kind of that's my threshold for chosen family. I also have these rules for myself, right? You don't steal, you don't purposely hurt people's feelings. You love everybody for who they are, you don't hate people because of their color or what they believe in, right? And if people like that are in my circle, then they also can become family. If someone is in my circle and I learned, for example, I was working with this guy and very friendly, but then I learned that he was homophobic and racist, right? So now you are absolutely out of the family. You can no longer be in my circle. So I think those standards that I have set for myself, plus those who can be vulnerable, are the ones that really get in.
Yeah, really good call. Yeah, kind of all of that resonated with me. I most particularly liked what you said, Sonj, about when you don't have to put on for somebody, their family. I mean, I feel that so strongly as an introvert that can perform for people and has had a performance background. Like if if I don't have to work for it, you're in. Yeah, really, really good. I want to take us to probably not anybody's favorite topic because we've been talking about it for 2 years. But I kind of want to hear like what unique ways or what unique traditions have kind of evolved in line with COVID, with the pandemic that continues going on and on. Like, how have you been able to kind of keep your relationships going? And how have you potentially had to like take a break because of limitations? And are there any like unique ways that you're connecting this year as the pandemic continues?
I'm going to say early on that we took little breaks from each other, right? But since the early on phases, we've just continued to do the same things. And that's probably bad. And at one point, everyone in our circle, except for my wife and I, got COVID. We were the only two that didn't get it. So we all still kind of hung out. In terms of my biological family, we have done a lot of duo and FaceTiming with one another, because not being able to travel and see them as often as I used to, it's nice to be able to see their faces. But during COVID, I mean, we've started like game nights and everything. So we're still, I know somebody's probably on this call just cringing, like, that's not what you're supposed to do during COVID. But that is what we have done, just kind of continue to hang out and be who we are, taking chances, I guess.
So a couple things that kind of happened for us. I mean, as a performer, I basically kind of saw my livelihood just like dry up on a vine and like die in front of me, which was hard. Really, really hard. And I watched all of these people that I love and care about in the burlesque community who are my chosen family start to panic, because this is also how they earn their money. And there was a lot of grieving. And so we created a lot of like online spaces for us to kind of get together and talk and figure out, what are we going to do? I ended up producing a lot of shows and events online. My organization, we received a couple of nice size grants. And so I kept producing in the middle of the pandemic virtually, even though I hated every second of it, because it can't replace being live and in person, because it was the only way I could put money in the pockets of my chosen family and my friends. And so that is a lot of what I was doing, was trying to make sure that my friends could keep creating art, and this family that I've built, that they could put food on their table. And another thing that happened, that I lost a cousin that I was very close to, relatively suddenly this past March. My cousin was murdered, and it was really hard and horrific. It's my family of origin, and so I was forced to be around my family of origin again. I hadn't really been around a lot of these folks in like 6 to 7 years, and we were just kind of thrust back into it. And it was a very eerie feeling, because we all kind of fell back into those performative positions that we are in the family. I'm the one with the wicked sense of humor, and I'm the one that kind of gets the ball going on things. And so I fell right back into my role of this person. And it was really weird feeling that happen. Also in the middle of the pandemic, and realizing that a lot of my family, some weren't vaccinated, some weren't going to get vaccinated. So there was a lot of that kind of conversation happening. And this is the first time I've been around the majority of my family being out as non-binary, and being out as queer, and being out as polyamorous, and trying to hold space for grief, and also trying to hold the boundaries surrounding my pronouns. It was very exhausting. And actually, after we had buried my cousin and all of that, I made the decision to cut off my family again, sadly, mostly just because they were happy that I was happy. They could tell that I was happy, and that things are going really well for me. And, we've never seen you look this good. And after explaining this is why, they're like, well, we can't accept that. And that's when I realized that like my happiness did not matter to them at all. And so I had to step away. I still talk to 2 of my family of origin. My baby sister, she follows my burlesque persona on Instagram. And that's how she keeps up with me. And it's really cute. She's very, very sweet. And a cousin of mine who has 2 beautiful little kids, who spend lots of time with my son and myself. But that's it. That's all I kind of have in that regard. But balancing spending time with family of origin, and then kind of comparing them to my chosen family, and just being like, this is whack. I don't want to be here. And so using all this energy to show up for your family of origin, I was so glad to have my chosen family as a place that I could come to after spending hours with my family of origin, just to be grieve the loss not only of my cousin, but grieve the loss again of my family, and grieve a piece of myself. And so I really appreciate this conversation about being able to be vulnerable and the intimacy and being able to have these moments of just like safety. And just this, I think if I wouldn't have had my family of origin, I would not have been able to make it out of that situation. It was traumatizing, but I was able to heal because of my community and because of my chosen family. And that's like, it's huge.
I know we're just about at time. Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, and just the story of like reconnecting and disconnecting with family of origin. What it brings up for me, and I think what this question also brought up is, I feel like when the pandemic first started and as it has progressed, in no way am I trying to find a silver lining to like a global tragedy by any means, but I can also say that I kind of watched like mainstream heteronormative society go through what I feel like queer people go through, which is like just a fucking crisis. And part of that to me was like, oh, like people are uncomfortable. They are feeling isolated. They are like in this spiritual crisis where they're leaning, like they have so much more space for like political theory and like wanting to learn more about the historical pedagogy of like why our world is the way that it is and challenge the status quo and feel like radical and just like all the way and like learn new ways of survival and how to thrive. And for me, it was staying connected and act with both my chosen family and my family of origin was actually, I felt like folks were kind of reaching out to me to kind of like for some guidance of like, ooh, how do we do this like thing? And, how do we pod map for coronavirus? You're queer, about polyamory, or you're like a social justice educator, why the world is so distraught, like all these ways in which I actually saw like a lot of opening in just our community's discomfort and like what came out of that and who we find value in, right? And kind of going back to what you said, Monique, like who's showing up to the pandemic party? Like that's a small circle. That's probably a smaller circle than when you used to go out to the bars all the time, right? And just like different ways in which we're like discovering, or I have been rediscovering, who I'm choosing and who chooses me has been a really, really interesting journey. And I've actually been really excited to see a lot of folks' lives be turned upside down. And because the world wasn't working. And I see that there are ways that we are like regenerating and rediscovering and actually like remobilizing into a lot healthier ways of being in connection with one another. And part of that's discovering safety and intimacy and all of that. So great question. Thanks for asking it, Tim.
Yeah, thank you so much. I definitely spend a lot of time thinking about just like the social fabric in the face of disruption, how it affects hegemony, how it affects just like day-to-day interactions with people. And I have not thought yet about, like queer or otherwise marginalized people becoming experts because of other people's unexpected crises. I think that's so valid. Like, yeah, that's a really good thought to end on, I think.
I don't want you to end yet, because I was going to say to sonj, in terms of a silver lining, so to speak, for the pandemic. One of the things that I found with these little COVID parties, we learned a lot more about each other. Like we stopped doing that surface type of stuff. Some of the games that we played was just 5 questions. We sat at a table and people got to go around and ask a question of one person. So we learned so much about each other. And I think that is a positive that I can take away from this COVID pandemic, is that I learned more about the people in my circle than I ever have known.
And I'll even add to that. I think being kind of a slutty person also like allowed me to like share how to practice like disclosure and how to practice like learning about who we've seen, like who'd you breathe around? I'm going to need you to tell me and I'll tell you, you know, like it was just like all these like kind of the queering of these things that I also found like it was kind of warmed me to see other people like practicing things like what would normally be like sexual health as like, you know, coronavirus health. Yeah, so definitely feel that as well.
Yeah, I want to piggyback off of that, like this idea of like the queering up of things and becoming like this authority on things, or like this person that people can come to talk to about things surrounding this. It definitely made my chosen family stronger in that way. I found out a lot of folks that were around me were waiting for an opportunity to get radicalized. They were waiting. And, you know, and then watching them just pop off was like beautiful. And folks that were just friends became chosen family because of that radicalization, where I'm just like, oh no, you're down. Like, great. Like I'm writing your phone number down on my forearm, because if I go to jail, I'm calling you. That's who I'm calling. And then I talk a lot about this idea of it's almost like a survivor's guilt in a way surrounding the pandemic and stuff like that. If it wasn't for the pandemic, I would not be living with my two partners right now. We live in a much bigger place that we couldn't afford individually. My work life has exploded in a way that it would not have if it wasn't for COVID. My child is doing much better in school and is doing much better with communicating his feelings and what's going on with him at any given moment, because we had that time off because of the pandemic. And so I live in a place of kind of balancing the guilt of my life has improved because everything stopped. And it is a silver lining for me. And it's unfortunate that so many lives had to pay for that in so many different ways. But I can't give it back. And I don't think I can. And I don't think I would want to, especially when I look at my child, who is my whole entire world, you know, I look into his little brown eyes, and he's able to communicate why he's feeling sad, which 2 years ago, he would not have been able to find the words to do that. And like, that's my heart, and that's my family, it's my blood. And so
You're trying to make me cry.
Sorry, it's unfortunate, but like,
I'm sorry, they are trying to make me cry. Sorry,
right.
Sorry.
But like, that's the power of it, right? And like, so much, those people did not die in vain. That's how I live and how I move.
I just love that point about your child. That's why I was saying, Pucks, that you're trying to make me cry, because that right there, the relationship that you build because of this slowdown, and the way that your child is able to thrive because of this pandemic, that we can all take that with us, right? Because that's what you want for your child to thrive, and to have it happen this way. It's unfortunate that many people lost their lives and many people lost their family members, but to have something that good come out of it is something that we can hold as a positive. So I'm happy for you and your child.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I get a little teary-eyed talking about him, because he's my family. He's the greatest thing, and he has the biggest heart, and he has been so accepting of my pronouns. He's been so accepting of all of these characters that are in our community, and these lovely queer folks that show up. He has never questioned anyone. We had a friend that came out, and you know, he went from calling them one name to another and was correcting people on their pronouns and like would want to fight over this. And I'm like, I ain't gonna stop you. You do what you got to do, because I like that. But like being able to watch the small child just absorb all of this family. And like I said, like we live in a really nice little home out in the middle of nowhere in Renton right now. And we're all here together and it's beautiful. And this idea of chosen family, my son now has 2 other people besides me that he can go to in this home that all love different things that he loves, which has allowed me to be able to, do the work that I need to do at times. Cause he's like, well, I can't go to mom about Ghostbuster trivia, but I can go to King about it. Oh, mom does not want to talk about Sonic the Hedgehog. So I'm going to go to Isaac about it, but mom really loves talking about My Little Pony with me. So it's time to go talk to mom. And like, I don't know, that is like this beautiful piece about chosen family and trust and vulnerability, is that my kid trusts my decision to bring these people into our world and into our family, and he trusts them as well.
Before we all start crying, I wanted to ask if we have any final closing thoughts on anything that we talked about in this conversation. And I also wanted to give folks a place to plug any projects, any social media, anything they want to share with our audience.
I can start so that others can finish us out in a grand way. The only thing I would say that this brought up and that I want to plug is just like tenderness, just like more tenderness. I think over the course of the last couple of years and a lot of my exploration of chosen family over the course of my life, I think that what I have learned to do is slow down and soften and become more tender for the people that are closest to me in my life, and request that of others. And from that, I think that we're like closing generational gaps of trauma by being able to actually like be closer with one another in this like absurd neo-colonial capitalist like world that we live in. So yeah, thank you to just like the panelists and to Seattle Pride for inviting my voice and valuing my story. And I hope that, y'all made me feel a little bit more tender, and I hope that like we can just like move that forward in all the choices that we make in the spaces that we're in. It was really nice to have this conversation.
I need so much work on being more tender. This military thing, you see that, right? It's hard. It's so hard. But anyway, where I wanted to go, normally I would plug my nonprofit. I don't want to do that. What I want to say is that we have many people who are out on the street living without homes who are LGBTQ. And it is so difficult for them, especially a trans person, to find the housing that they need once they've been homeless. So during these holidays, locate some of those folks. You don't have to invite them into your home, but take them the extras that you have for this meal, or take them a blanket or something. Just let them know that they are not forgotten folks out there. Because I can tell you, many of the people who are living out there on the street will tell you that they just feel like they're forgotten. So now, at this time, would be the time to get out there and really help our folks. And by our folks, I mean this LGBTQI two-spirit community that we have, to really show them that we see them out there.
I just want to thank y'all for having me on this panel. It's been really beautiful to listen to both of you speak, and I love being in BIPOC spaces so much, and connecting with folks this way. So I hope that we can connect offline as well, because that'd be beautiful. I produce all the time. Can't stop, won't stop all the time. And a lot of my burlesque stuff is centered around marginalized identities, specifically BIPOC, performers and LGBTQIA performers, and recently specifically focusing on fat performers as well. So I have 2 events coming up. One this Friday called Melanation Station Burlesque. It is at a BIPOC-owned soul food restaurant in Tacoma, and definitely check that show out. It's really great. I think we only have like 16 tickets left for the show. It's a very popular little boutique show. And then on January 22nd, we are launching a group called Curve Collective Cabaret. It's the Pacific Northwest only all Black and fat burlesque troupe. And so we have our first show coming up on the 22nd of January at the Given in Ballard. So those are 2 ways that you can support or check out things that we're doing, and knowing that money is going into the hands of marginalized folks all the time, because that's how we do. Sorry, that's Essence Lounge in Tacoma. Essence Lounge.
You're gonna go, Monique.
Did you say my name?
Oh yeah, I was just wondering if you were gonna plug or if you were gonna go. Or do you?
Oh, you know what? Typically, I plug. I'm not gonna plug because I said what I needed to say. I think that's better to leave you with than plugging. But if you want to go to fobhope.org and check out my organization, you're more than welcome.
Word. Well, thank you so much, everybody, for just like having like a wonderfully like vulnerable, like multifaceted conversation. I hope this felt like a safe space for everybody. Please let me know if you have any feedback about how we can make these events better, more inclusive, more representative. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed moderating with y'all. And I guess we're going to sign off now. We don't have Pride Speaks in January. We're going to move to quarterly. But I think it's extremely likely that we will probably ask some of our speakers today for future speaking engagements if they'll have us. Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks to everybody that came. Thanks for supporting Seattle Pride and the Seattle Out and Proud Foundation. Thanks for hanging out with us on a Wednesday evening on Zoom. On Hopin. Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.